In 1952, archaeologists working just outside the walls of Mycenae lift a skeleton out of a shaft grave in Grave Circle B. A man, around 30 years old when he died. He appeared tall, strong-boned, with big feet, and then they reached the skull. A section of bone has been cut away in a clean way, and the edges around the opening tell the real story. They'd already started to heal, which strongly suggested that someone performed surgery on this man's head in the Bronze Age. A trephination, cutting into living bone, most likely to relieve the swelling after a blow that should have killed him on the spot. Yet, it didn't kill him on the spot. Instead, he lived long enough for that bone to start knitting itself back together. Now think about the last time you got hurt. A paper cut, a sprained wrist, a cold, and you're out for a week, working from bed, cancelling plans, waiting to feel human again. To him, none of that would even register as an injury, because somewhere between his world and ours, something in the human body changed. Or maybe nothing changed in the body at all, and everything changed in how we use it. This video is about what made a Mycenaean warrior able to absorb damage that would end most people alive today. Not the legend, but the actual, documented habits that built a body like that. Backed by his own bones and by a group of modern soldiers who nearly broke themselves trying to become him for a single day. There are 6 things his life demanded of his body that ours never does. By the end of this, you'll know exactly what they were, and exactly how to put every one of them back into your own life. Subscribe and stay to the end, because the 6th one is the one almost nobody today even attempts. But before we get to what built that body, we need to understand what it was up against. A Mycenaean warrior wasn't hurt in a gym or a scrimmage. He was hurt in melee combat. Real bronze, real spear points. Another man's hands closing around him, over and over for years, and somehow he kept surviving it. That survival wasn't chance. It was the direct result of what his body had already been forced to become. Which brings us to the first habit, a body rebuilt by real injury, not protected from it. Osteological studies of Mycenaean burials, the direct examination of the bones, keep turning up the same pattern. Trauma to the ulna, fractures in the shoulder, broken ribs, all healed. These aren't isolated. They cluster in exactly the places you'd expect from close-quarters melee combat. The arm that blocks, the shoulder that takes the weight of a shield, the ribs that absorb what gets through. Here's what that actually means biologically. Bone isn't static. Load it, damage it, and it doesn't just heal. It remodels denser at the site of old stress. The same mechanism behind Wolff's Law. The principle that bone adapts to the forces placed on it. A body that survives repeated combat trauma across years isn't the same body it started as. It's been rebuilt, injury by injury, into something structurally tougher than it was the day it was born. Modern life removes almost every one of those inputs. We flinch from contact. We rest at the first sign of pain. And the body, true to its nature, adapts to that too, just in the opposite direction. Not with toughness, but with fragility. If you want to reverse it, the principle is simple, even if the discipline isn't. Controlled exposure to real physical stress, grappling, sparring, honest contact, instead of training that never touches resistance at all. The Mycenaean body wasn't given resilience. It earned it, wound by wound. This wasn't a body that avoided damage and hoped for the best. Grave stellae and gold rings from the shaft graves at Mycenae show the same message carved and cast over and over. Men locked in single combat, dagger to dagger, close enough to feel each other's breath. That was the expectation, not the exception. A society doesn't repeat an image that many times unless it's telling you exactly what it valued. But surviving a wound is one thing. Surviving the weight of your own equipment for 11 straight hours is another problem entirely. and in 1960, archaeologists found the object that would eventually prove it. This is the second habit: carrying dead weight for hours. Near the village of Dendra, in a Mycenaean tomb dated to the 15th century BC, a Swedish team uncovered the oldest complete suit of body armor in human history. 18 bronze plates covering a man from neck to knee. The original weighed around 18 kilograms. For centuries afterward, historians assumed it was ceremonial. Too heavy, too rigid, too much like a bronze barrel for real combat. Surely no one fought a war in this. In 2024, a research team decided to actually test that assumption. They built a faithful replica, this one weighing just over 23 kilograms with the boar's tusk helmet included, and put it on 13 active Marines from the Hellenic Army's 32nd Brigade. Then, they ran an 11-hour simulated Bronze Age battle, from 7 in the morning to nearly 6 at night. The armor held up. The men did not just survive it. Physiologically, they were able to sustain combat output inside that bronze shell for the entire day. Which means the real answer to how did anyone fight in this was never that the armor was too heavy. It's that the men wearing it had bodies conditioned to carry dead, unmoving weight for hours without their output collapsing. A specific, trainable capacity most people today have simply never built. You build it the same way now that it was built then, minus the bronze. Loaded carries, rucking with a weighted vest, time under load, not just load itself. It is one of the least glamorous forms of training that exists, and one of the most directly tied to real-world toughness. But carrying the weight was only half the fight. The other half was the heat trapped inside it. Which brings us to the third habit: fighting inside your own oven. That same 2024 study modeled something almost nobody considers when they picture ancient combat: thermal load. A man sealed inside 18 kilograms of bronze under the Greek sun isn't just carrying weight. He's fighting inside a furnace of his own armor, his core temperature climbing with every minute of exertion. Heat like that kills output long before a blade does. Exhaustion, disorientation, collapse, all of it arrives faster in the heat than in the cold. And yet, the data showed these bodies could function through it for hours, in full gear, in the field. That's a nervous and cardiovascular system trained to tolerate heat stress without shutting down. What modern sports science calls heat acclimatization. And it's still used today by elite military units and endurance athletes for the exact same reason it mattered in bronze armor 3,500 years ago. Because the first time your body meets extreme heat under load can't be the day your life depends on it. You train the tolerance in beforehand, sauna sessions, training in the heat deliberately. So the day it matters, your body already knows how to survive it. Which brings us to the part of that 2024 trial the researchers almost didn't run. Because it's one thing to wear the armor, it's another to get hit while wearing it. This is the fourth habit: taking a real blow. The Marines were armed with full-weight, full-length replicas of a Mycenaean cruciform sword found in that same Dendra tomb, 85 centimeters of bronze, and wooden spears tipped with blunted copper. Unsharpened, yes. But the researchers were explicit. The fights had to be real. A blow had to be a blow. Line that up against the skeletal record we already covered. Real, healed trauma to the shoulder, the ribs, the forearm. And a picture comes into focus. Mycenaean training wasn't shadowboxing against air. It was full contact. Because full contact is the only kind of practice that tells you the truth about what you can actually take. Modern combat sports understand this instinctively. A boxer who has never been hit flinches the first time it happens in a real fight. At the exact moment flinching gets him hurt worse. Controlled contact, boxing, wrestling, grappling, anything where another human is actually resisting you, builds a kind of calm under real pressure that shadow drills never can. It's uncomfortable by design. That discomfort is the whole point. Now, even a body that can take a hit, carry the load, and survive the heat still has to know what fight it's actually in. And the Mycenaeans built for more than one. That's the fifth habit. Built for the fight you didn't choose. Inside that same 2024 study, researchers didn't just run one combat scenario. They simulated a foot soldier fighting a chariot, arming the foot soldier with a medium stone, roughly 1.3 kilograms, to throw. Then they simulated a chariot fighting a warrior on a ship, this time handing the fighters bows. Different terrain, different enemy, different weapon entirely. Same men, expected to adapt on command. That's the real lesson underneath the specifics. A body trained for exactly one scenario is a body that fails the moment reality hands it a different one. Cross-training, genuine competence across multiple modes, not obsessive mastery of a single narrow skill, is what lets a person actually function when the fight in front of them isn't the fight they trained for. The Mycenaeans didn't get to choose their battlefield, neither do you. And they didn't get to choose which weapon would fail them first either, which is exactly why they never carried just one. Which brings us to the sixth and final habit, a backup for your backup. Open a Mycenaean warrior's grave and you rarely find a single weapon laid beside him. You find a system, a spear for reach, a sword for when the enemy closes the distance, a dagger for when even the sword is gone, or broken, or knocked from his hand, and the fight has collapsed into something closer to a wrestling match than a battle. 3 tools, layered by range, buried together because they were used together. Even the shield reflects the same thinking. Mycenaean warriors carried 2 distinct shapes, the tall, curved figure of 8 shield and the rectangular tower shield, each suited to a different kind of fight, single combat versus a pitched battle line. You didn't grab whichever was closest. You matched the tool to the fight in front of you, because the wrong shield in the wrong fight got you killed exactly as fast as the wrong weapon. That's a documented fallback plan, worn on the body every single day. The modern version of this has nothing to do with weapons and everything to do with skill. Most people build their entire identity around one method, one job, one plan, and quietly assume it will never fail them. The Mycenaean warrior assumed the opposite. He assumed his first plan would break, so he trained for what came after it broke, and the plan after that. 6 things, not one. A body rebuilt by real injury instead of protected from it. Trained to carry dead weight for hours. Trained to survive the heat of its own armor. Trained through real contact instead of empty repetition. Trained across more than one kind of fight, and never trusting a single plan to carry the whole day. None of these worked alone. Strip away any one of the 6, and the whole system gets weaker, because the load bearing means nothing without the heat tolerance to survive carrying it in the sun. The contact training means nothing if the body underneath hasn't already been rebuilt by real stress. The backup weapon means nothing if the man holding it has never trained to adapt to an unfamiliar fight. It was never a trick. It was a body engineered, piece by piece, by a life that gave it no other option. Go back to that shaft grave in Grave Circle B, the skull, cut into and left to heal. That skeleton isn't a record of a man who got unlucky. It's a record of a man whose body was built, deliberately, to survive what should have ended him, and to keep functioning long after. We didn't lose the ability to become that. We just stopped asking our bodies to earn it. The ancient way exists to recover what was lost. If this changed how you think about the next time you flinch from something that should barely register, you already know what to do.